workshops which FICCI, your UA local initiative chapter has brought to you with the set of the experts who have joined from different parts of the country. Thanks to the technology that this is feasible and we all are connected easily on Saturday without having any hassles of being present at the same place. So thank you all for joining us. And one of the important topics, like we mentioned in our previous technical workshops, that we would be taking up various series during the year and various topics so that all of you are equally equipped to implement the UA in your own businesses. I will just, for the people who have joined new, I know many of you have already community members who are part of UA community from which FICCI is having it and the local initiative chapter is running it. But for those who are new and who have joined us today, we would just like to mention that as FICCI, we are the series digital language body, which is working with the different stakeholders, be it the government or industry, academia, technical fraternity, to make the content on the internet in our Indian languages available. So basically getting you a multilingual internet. So we have a full-fledged ecosystem within FICCI, and Dr. Data as a co-chair for our committee, of course, leads that part of it. And we are happy to help you out across any part of it in the languages domain. This specific discussion today is on the universal acceptance. We know that we have been talking about what is universal acceptance. For the new people, I would just like to say, I'm sure the experts will talk much more in detail today, and you have a full technical session being taken by Mr. Mahesh Kulkarni ji today. So I would just say that your multilingual, digitally inclusive internet is not possible, is not complete without UA. It is like you have half of the content only available in your language, but your address is not there in your own respective language. For having that, and also getting the email address internationalization, which is basically getting the email address, be it the mailbox name or the domain name in your own local language, your local script, from which you connect with heart. UA is the key thing. So today the discussion is going to be on IDNs in EAI Indian languages, the challenges and the remediation. This is going to be more on the technical aspects, which we are going to talk about it. We have joined us by the panel of experts, Dr. Ajay Data, who is the chairman, USG ICANN, and also founder CEO for Data Exchange Technologies Private Limited. And he's, of course, the chairman of, co-chair of our FICCI IT and ITS committee. And we have also have Mr. Mahesh Kulkarni ji, who's going to take us through the whole presentation on the subject. He is a director for EVARIS Systems and former senior director, CTEC Government of India. Thank you, Mahesh ji. Thank you, experts, for joining us today. I would just say that, members, you know that internet is something which has changed our life completely. We talk about when it was launched in India. It is back in 15th August 1995 when internet was first introduced. And we know how it has actually affected all parts of our life, be it our corporate world, be it our professional world, be it our personal world. Any smallest things of your life, you would be having some connection on the internet during the day. Your life is not complete without doing something or the other on the internet, be it the financial transaction, be it the information, entertainment, and you can keep on counting the advantages. So when we talk about this particular subject, we would say that India is a country with a diversity. We know the powerful nature of this internet, but what is more important is getting this internet to you in your own local languages, so that it reaches to the maximum people who are living in the nook and corners of our country in their own respective language and script. That is the objective with FICCI is working. And we have specifically taken up this whole objective with the support of our senior members who have joined us today and many others. And we also request those who have joined us today and not yet part of the community, kindly sign in for the community. You'll get updates, you get to know the things, and then of course, you can also play a role in doing various activities. We would need as many hands as possible to actually deliver this noble cause. It is not small, it's a very, very, very big journey. When we talk about the numbers, almost like 4.6 billion internet users are there in the world. And when we talk about our India, we know that 75% of our internet is being accessed by people on the mobile internet. And we are actually growing mobile internet economy. Almost like we are going to have almost 800 mobile smartphones by the end of this year, as per one of the reports. So when you have the device in your hand, you have the capability. We request you to join hands and help us out so that we get the things in your own languages across India. We are actually working on all the 22 official languages, and we look forward to your support in delivering this. Now, I'll not be talking much on the UA and its sake. I've just given you a brief. I'll now request Dr. Ajay Teta, who, of course, as I introduced, is chairman for USG ICANN, to kindly deliver a special remarks. Over to you, Dr. Teta.
Thank you, Sarika, for setting the context very clearly. And we have a very special speaker today, Mahesh Kulkarni ji, who is an expert in that area, going to take you in detail about universal acceptance and the importance around multilingual internet. What is multilingual internet and what is important, why it is important today, is something which I will talk about, and then we'll leave the floor to Mahesh Kulkarni ji. Importance of multilingual internet as a socio-economic tool of empowerment. Why? Because it empowers people. It breaks the language barriers. It brings people online. We have around 800 million people who are on internet. We are almost 500 million people who are deprived from not using internet the way they want to. They are rough numbers, but you can see we are addressing a large population in India. 22 official languages. But this is not just meaning that 22 languages there in the country. There are a lot more languages in the country. Language is a vital tool for communication. We cannot deny that. It is not only a means of communication, thoughts and ideas, but also obviously it builds friendship, economic relationship, cultural ties. So, and that's the only way. Missiles and guns do not make the communication and the relationships. What has made the communication is the language, and the language we talk. We could communicate with sign language also by just our hands and lips and eyes. But moreover, a language distinguishes the differences and also celebrates the uniqueness of our culture. So when our culture of a country in a region or a community gets celebrated much more better. That's the reason in this country we celebrate 22 official languages, and still this is one nation. Still we celebrate festivals across the country. And there are certain festivals which we celebrate across the country which passes even their language. But the language of country remains one. And we witnessed it on our 15th August when we celebrated Amrit Mahotsav with Har Ghar Tiranga. Everybody celebrated that language. Everybody celebrated that culture of the country. Any language is a gift of knowledge. Of more than one language makes a man more efficient and skillful in many, many ways. We have tested that in many ways. It opens our minds. It guides us into a magical world of fancies and dreams. To certain the proper learning of languages can make breaking the barriers. Imagine a farmer who do not understand English. He goes to a doctor. In which language he gets his prescription? English. When he goes to a shop, when he buys a medicine, in which language he gets his medicine? English. So imagine how does he takes his first medicine without anybody's help. So could you imagine that falling ill makes him dependent to somebody to even take a medicine? That is the kind of impact it could have socially and takes away the dignity of a person. Imagine I cannot decide if I don't know English that which medicine to take in the next day in the morning and when to take, what doctor has written, what is written on the medicine. This entire thing becomes very, very difficult. Imagine you are in China and you are given everything in Chinese language. How do you take your first prescription? How do you buy a railway ticket? How do you buy an airline ticket? That's the similar situation is with person who do not know English in this country. We must know that there are almost 19,000 languages or dialects are spoken in India. They are not 22. And as their mother tongues in the country, and I'm sure because of these numbers, this discussion today becomes much more critical in this country. And FICCI is doing a fantastic job. We must applaud that to break that barrier. This is the only chamber which is taking this initiative to the country and making awareness around that this is something very important to talk about. We have almost 120 languages which are spoken by more than 10,000 people in the country. Almost 120 languages. Can we ignore them? Can we leave them behind? Answer is no. We have to bring everybody on board. As our Prime Minister has said, nobody must be left behind. And that's the motto of this workshop today, what Mahesh talked about as one of the pillar of universal acceptance. And we must also understand what government has done. 22 official languages have their own top-level domain name in the country. That's very important to know. If you do not know that country has invested in 22 official languages by bringing top-level domain names in the country, which means I can have a domain name in a language of my choice, at least in official languages. And it is supported by NICSI, which is a government-run entity, providing domain name in all official languages. This makes this country unique in the world. No other country has so many top-level domain names. Only one or two in the languages perspective. And in this entire context, universal acceptance becomes an important pillar, which we are going to talk about today, to break the barrier of languages and make it accessible to almost everyone. I will end my speech by showing you 2 slides, and then we will hand it over to Mahesh. So what is universal acceptance? I hope you can see my slide. So this is a very clear mission universal acceptance has, that all domain names. So I said there are 22 domain names we have in the country, which are on languages, and almost 50 plus countries, by the way, globally have top level domain names of their own. But India as a unique, we have 22 top level domain names, which means all the languages are available. So the universal, what is universal acceptance? It is very simple, that all domain names and all email addresses must be accepted in all software applications. It sounds simple. It sounds that if I have an email ID, will it work or not? Do you have a doubt? No, answer, we don't have a doubt. But unfortunately, we have a problem. And that's what this universal acceptance is all about. Some IDs do not work. We want them to work. Some domain names do not work the way an English domain name will work. So unfortunately, it doesn't work if it is in language domain. So we are taking away the right of the person who do not speak English. And if he owns a domain name and email ID in the language of his choice, it will not give him the same privileges which Mahesh Kulkarni ji has in his English ID, or Sarika has, or I have an English ID. That is the barrier we want to break and bring people online. And why it is important in impact? Impact is because once we bring people online, and once we allow all the domain names to be as effective as English domain name is, obviously it brings the choice. Obviously it brings the competition in the domain names, because now I need not to select only English. If it was as good as, so mera mail.com I will not get, or mail.in I will not get, but if I have mail.bharat in Hindi, so I have a choice. But will it work the same way as mail.in? Answer is no. That's what we want to do, that it should bring my choice and improve the competition in the exact manner the way it is required. And for the end user, which is the most important aspect, to give him the broader access and bring him online the way it should be, the way an English user can grow his life cycle on internet, and person who do not know English or do not want to work in English can also do exactly the same things in the internet world. Universal acceptance was formed in 2015 as a community initiative. Almost 700 global members are part of it. I am the global chairman of that group. Apple, Google, Facebook, Twitter, you name the company they are part of. And we are all trying to solve this problem. And this is my last slide. And so I am setting the context for Maheshji, so that Maheshji can start from there and so tell you that what is the real problem. So you know there are domain names and there are email addresses. These kind of domain names which are in top 3 line, and you can see in a different character. So we will assume there are domain names could be registered only in .com, .net, .org or .in. But could you imagine there could be a domain name .sky or .data like engineering. Now you could have 64 characters after the dot. That is possible. So will your software, if you're a software engineer listening to me, if you're an app developer listening to me, if you're a website developer listening to me, can you guarantee, can you ensure that these domain names will not be rejected in your form which you are creating? You will accept them the same way. You will create the hyperlink whenever is required. You will not just assume that it could be only these 7 top level domain names. That's one part. Second part is the domain name in a language of person's choice. Like you have example, I think probably you can't read it. And this is a purposefully written there. It is a Thai language domain name. Imagine this, you cannot read the domain name right now. Imagine a person who do not know English, how he feels. This is exactly the feeling what we must be getting right now, that it's a Greek which is written here in Thai. This is exactly the feeling which he will get. So we need to break that feeling and bring him the language selection in his life. And the second thing is the email addresses. So you have the email addresses as examples. These examples must work. And let me tell you, from all 5 examples do not work exactly the same way where it should be. The only first example, I must say, that works at 90% of the places. As per our report of universal acceptance research report, 90% of the sites will accept that, where the long top level domain name and the new top level domain name will work. But every example of ASCII at IDN, Unicode at ASCII, Unicode at IDN, wherever there is a Unicode and IDN is coming in, they have a very lax acceptance in the softwares. Can I sign up on Facebook with that ID? Answer is no. Can I sign up Twitter? Answer is no. Can I subscribe to my Honorable Prime Minister's newsletter? Answer is no. Can I sign up on MyGov? Answer is no. Can I update this web email address in my Aadhaar card? Answer is no. These are the problems which we are trying to solve. And so on and so forth. Make My Trip, Twitter, and anywhere you want to sign up, or American Express, or your favorite bank, you want to get a newsletter, you cannot sign up. That's the universal acceptance problem. So we have come out with 5 pillars: accept, validate, process, store, display. I am not getting into detail. I am sure Maheshji is getting into this in more detail there. But this is what I wanted to tell to all of you, to set the context that why it is important, why it is critical for universal acceptance to be exercised, to be experienced, to work on that, to bring next billion people online. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you, Fikki, for bringing this to all of us. And thank you for bringing Mahesh Kulkarni, who is an expert in this IDN and EAI area, who will give us the knowledge imparted with everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Data, for, of course, speaking your heart out in terms of how important the UA is going to be there for our country. Of course, as a global chair, your focus across all the regions and how important specifically for a country like India with so much of a diversity, and how it's going to help everybody. Rather, it's not something which is optional. It should be kind of a thing which we should be adopted, like it should be part of our life so that we can actually take its benefits. Also mentioning about various processes, which in any case, the 5 processes, which Maheshji would take it up in his presentation. So thank you for sharing your insights and delivering this special address. And thank you for taking the time out for joining us today. So with this, we now move on to our next speaker. As Dr. Data mentioned, he is a very seasoned speaker in this domain, has been involved actively with his past experience in the very technical sides, technical aspects related to the internet, various areas he has already worked on it. And today, Mr. Mahesh Kulkarni, who is a director for EAI system, and of course, like I mentioned in his previous avatar, as a former senior director of CDAC, Government of India, he's been involved on various technical aspects, would be speaking and taking us through on the subject for today's workshop, which is more about IDNs and EAI in Indian languages, challenges and remediation. Over to you, Maheshji. We look forward to get the technical insights from you, and thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Sarika and Dr. Data. I think Dr. Data has set up the tone as well as what exactly needs to be covered, what are the challenges. So actually, I'm going to navigate you through I'm not going to use the word challenges. I'm going to use the word opportunities. That's the right word, basically, because challenges, as a USAG chairman, he will agree that most of the challenges are being taken care of. Only the question is that the awareness has to be there with the people, and people need to just implement. That's all. It's a very, very simple thing. Sometimes my presentation would look very complex to you, but it's not so. It is just to set the tone. It's just to see that what complexities are hidden from you and how easily it is there to have Indian language domain names. Having said that, I would like to share my presentation, and maybe just I hope it is visible to you people. Just give me. So I hope it is visible.
Yes, Mahesh, is visible. Would you like to make it a full screen?
Yeah, I think it is full screen now.
It is now full screen, yeah.
So actually, as I said, we will be navigating through the most of the basic fundamentals are being touched upon by Ajay Data. I will try to elaborate further. Secondly, the challenges around Indian languages, the opportunities around Indian languages, and the remediation part of it, especially when we come to the level of UA. So as was being told, I think UA becomes a very, very fundamental requirement for multilingual internet. That's a very, very important statement. We do have 22 languages that we will anyway cover, but it's like a Unicode. Means when the system started, it was just an Asca based systems were there, and only Roman scripts was supported, and only English was prevalent at that point of time. With the advent of Unicode, I think it is truly a multilingual internet, wherein now you can have almost 149 languages which are represented into the digital medium very, very smoothly, very seamlessly. You can communicate very easily now from one desktop to another desktop, or from a mobile to mobile, or even coming to the smart TVs and everything put together. So I think language have become all pervasive, and it has reached people. So technology has made our life very, very simple in that case. So only adding to that, as I said to you, UA becomes a fundamental requirement for multilingual internet. Second part, which I just wanted to highlight to you people, that it should not be, the language should not be treated as an add-on. I think it has to be a by default. It should not be optional. Optional can be English. By default, our applications, the systems, the everything has to be designed, developed in our languages. When I use the word our languages, which means that if you follow the standard practices, guidelines, then all your applications, all your systems definitely become something called the globally ready, which means that there is with the localization and internationalization standards, one can actually easily change the language of your software product. So having said that, I'll just come to my presentation part. I will skip to the, okay. So this was been talked about by Ajay Data, that we do have a number of languages. Scheduled languages are 22. Living languages, if you really look at it, are 452. And they are divided into 4 language families like Indo-Aryan, Dravidian, Tibeto-Burman, Munda. Why some of these things are highlighted? It is from the perspective of this, there is something called the language, and there is something called the script. Okay, so language is the spoken form of communication, while the script is the written form of communication. I will make it very simple for understanding purposes. So if you look at Indian languages, we do have 22 Indian languages. Some of them are written from left to right, and some of them are written from right to left. So we have got challenge over there, which means that we have got 3 languages like Urdu, Sindhi, Kashmiri, which are written using something called the right to left script, basically. Okay, while our Devanagari script, which is there, it is a left to right script. Okay. So for 22 Indian languages, basically we require something close to around 11 scripts to be there, basically. So if you look at, so some of these following scripts are like Assamese, Bengali, Devanagari, Gujarati, Gurumukhi, Kannada, Malayalam, Oriya. One second, let me point out this somewhere. Yeah. Oriya, Tamil, Telugu, and Urdu. Okay, so these are the scripts which are written, basically, required, basically the most. Okay, Just to give a little bit background, that we do have certain nuances, and those nuances are being handled. I am not only just giving as a background to the technical people over here. So Devanagari is a script, as I said to you, and it is used by many languages basically. So many languages are written using Devanagari as a script. So one is the Hindi, Marathi, Konkani, Nepali, Sanskrit, Sindhi, Dogri, Santhali, and many more languages. These are all 20 out of 22 basically official languages, but many more languages are written using Devanagari as a script. So we have got a nuance saying that one script and many languages. Okay, there is an other fact that we do have something called the one language and many script. So if you look at let us say Sindhi as a language, it is being written into basically Perso-Arabic script like Urdu, and it is also written in something called the Devanagari. Similar way, there is a script called as a Santhali, rather language called as a Santhali, and it is written in many scripts like Roman, Alchiki, Devanagari, Uri, and Bangla script. They are written in that basically. Currently, we are confined as a IDN or a CCTLD. We are confined to 22 official languages and the maximum used script basically. This was only from the perspective that these languages are already encoded into the Unicode. So coming to one of the another requirement, these requirements are being taken care of as I repeat basically, but as a developer, website developer, you need to understand the nuances so that you can effectively implement certain things. So unlike Roman or unlike English language, the English language is a linear one basically. So if I start typing a word, something called a good, then I input the word G from the keyboard, then O from the keyboard, and D again from the keyboard. And while there is a one-to-one correspondence between what you input, what you store, and what you display basically. So there is a one-to-one correspondence between that, and it is a linear script, which means that there is nothing called the ascenders and descenders. So it's a linear script. It is a really simple script, and only 26 alphabets are being used. While if you really look at Indian languages scripts are complex, but the phonetics part is very, very simple, basically, very simple, basically. So in this case, when we say Indian languages, we term is, instead of a character, we term it as a syllable. Okay. So what is a syllable? A syllable is the composition of two or many characters, basically. So on a screen, if you look at the screen at this moment of time, there is a something called the syllable, which is called the key. This is a syllable, or we can call it an akshar. From the keyboard, one can input. Now you can use any type of a keyboard basically. One can use a phonetic keyboard, one can use an inscript keyboard, one can use a typewriter keyboard. Also that I will touch upon those points when my presentation comes up. The keyboard also makes a difference over there. So I enter, suppose let us say this ka, then E matra, then ta, then a and b. So this is the kitab, and finally at the end of the day, it is rendered like the E matra is actually positioned into the first place. So this is the first E matra. So there is certain algorithms inside the system which takes care of reordering and other part, which I am not going to actually dwell upon further. So this is something called the Akshara Formation, and we have got a key which is at this moment of time composed of two characters. But however, we only see from the visual perspective, we see only a single what is called a character, which is a visual representation of two characters put together. This is one part of it. Second part of it, what is going to happen in Indian languages is that the composition, the glyph composition sometimes is totally different. Okay, so if you look at the ka halanta sha, so this is ka halanta sha, then the rendering is sha. This is a separate character. So there is no traces of this glyph and no traces of this glyph, but it is a separate character which is popping up over here, which generally means that internally you need to have an algorithm basically to take care of this composition logic and actually display the appropriate basically glyphs onto the screen. Okay, so this is, but these are all been taken care by the operating system, the current operating systems which are there, like whether it is a Linux or whether it is a Mac or whether it is a Windows, they are all taking care of all this stuff, including the mobile platform. So there is our Indian languages are well represented on the mobile platform. Coming to another nuances, basically, as I said to you, it's all about the syllables basically which are being represented. Why syllables are important, that I will dwell further on my presentation side. But there is one more thing, is that we have got something called a different representation for the same spelling, same word. So I have written this anna, which is a food in Marathi. It has been written in 3 different forms basically, and they are all valid forms basically. Okay, so these are all valid forms which are been written. Okay, alternate forms. So these are called the alternate form anna, but these are visually different basically. If you really look at it, they are visually different, but they mean the same. Okay, similar way, there is something called a linear conjunct, or rather horizontal conjunct, and there is something called the vertical conjunct. So if you look at a Sanskrit language, the Sanskrit script basically, it is mostly using the vertical conjunct rather than the horizontal conjunct. So these are something called the vertical conjuncts. Okay, while this is a horizontal conjunct. One more important point which is coming up is that there are alternate spellings. So this is the Hindi word written in 2 different. These are actually a proper spelling. Both are permissible. Both are being used, and both are actually proper spellings. So Hindi with Bindi and Hindi with Na Halanda. So this is something called the both are proper. Same thing happens with the Tasveer and Tasveer. This background is very, very essential when we talk about the something called the internationalized domain name. Okay. Okay. Now coming to what Ajay Data has presented one slide to you people, I am just going to probably for repeat sake, just trying to bring your attention over here. That in previously we have got this is the Asca domain. So Asca domain is we have got asca.asci. That is earlier there were 8 top level domains which included .com, .res, .net. Those are only limited to those. With the new GTLD program of ICANN, now one can have the domain names, the TLDs of your own choice. That's very, very important and significant work which has happened. And now one can have a TLDs in a different in your own script, as well as basically you can have a different types of a TLD. Means, for example, apart from .com and .res, one can have .sbi, .tata, .mcdonald, or you can have your own if you afford to pay money for that. So I think one can have a TLD of their own, and you can create or your own fraternity inside that. Okay. Then there is something called the asci.new short. So new short is, I give already an example that previously .com, .res were there. Now the new short is something called the .sbi, and so on and so forth, which are limited to 3 characters. And there is something called the asci.new long, which means that it should permit or it should use more than 3 characters. Means .technology, actually it is more than 3 characters. Or you can have McDonald as I give an example to you, and so on and so forth. And these are something called the new top level domains. So this is a short domain and there is a long domain. And what point was being stressed out over here is that this should be accepted by your system. That's very, very important, because what is happening is that most of the systems or most of the developers have been actually using a regular expression pattern basically for validating the input domain names, okay, or email addresses. So if they are using something called as a whitelisted basically domain names, like restricting them only to .com or .res or .net, then .technology will not get accepted over there, or any character or any domain name, top level domain, more than 3 characters will not get accepted over there. This is the fundamental requirement of a universal acceptance. So when we use the word universal acceptance, it is not applied only to internationalized domain name, but it is applied to ASCII domain name, which are new domain names, as I explained to you, as well as a new long domain, okay, new short and new long, okay, or long domain. Then the internationalized domain name comes. There are different categories of internationalized domain name that we don't have to worry about the categories. But what it means is that you can have your own language domain name or a label in the domain name. Okay. So this is the example. What is you see on a screen is the IDN.ASCII. So this whole portion is in Chinese, and you have got a ASCII, okay, over here as a TLD. Same way ASCII.IDN. So you got a ASCII here, and this is the IDN. So these are all different categories of the domain names. Okay, I will explain this 6 and 7 separately to you, because I don't want to confuse you at this moment of time. And these are called as different categories of domains. So there is a right to left, as I explained to you. For Urdu, Sindhi and Kashmiri, we definitely require this particular category, that is RTL.RTL. So you will have a domain name .Bharat, something .Bharat in Urdu, and something .Bharat in different languages. So these are some of the examples, like Bharat Bhasha.Bharat, bharatbhasha.com, bharatbhasha.bharat, and bharat.bharat is the examples of IDN.IDN in Punjabi. This is the example of IDN.IDN in Hindi, and so on and so forth. Okay. And as was been told to you by Ajay Dataji, that NICSI has already been registering the IDNs under .bharat. So we are very, very privileged that we have already, as was been said, that we are the first in the globe to have all 22 Indian languages, rather top level domain CCTLDs have been registered. Okay. Okay, a little bit of background that as of today, there are active, means apart from the earlier 8, actually earlier only with the TLDs were 8. Now, if you can see, the scope has grown and it is now 1,488 active TLDs are there. And out of that active TLDs, 153 are IDN TLDs, as I said to you. And out of that 153 IDN CCTLDs, 22 are from India. Okay. So this includes 16 IDN CCTLD covering 22 Indian languages represented using 11 script. .bharat IDN CCTLD covers 7 languages. So generally what happens is that if you look at a .bharat as a TLD, which is called the CCTLD, .bharat, looking at the string .bharat, you cannot say it is written in Hindi or it is written in Marathi. Actually, both are same. So which necessarily means that when I use the word .bharat as a top level domain or CCTLD, it covers up almost like 7 languages like Bodo, Dogri, Hindi, Konkani, Maithili. Okay, because they are using the same CCTLD. Okay, and Marathi, Nepali, and Sindhi Devanagari. While .bharat, which is written in basically Bengali, covers 2 languages basically, which is called as Bengali and Manipuri. So these are 2 Manipuri languages that have been covered. While rest of the things are being covered, IDN CCTLD consists of LTR and RTL script as well. Okay, now coming to the hard stock of the work basically over here is that this is an Asca email. So this is the format of an Asca email, as you can see on the screen. So this is the web test @universal acceptance test.icu. So this whole portion from the right side of the is called the domain part, while the left part, which is called the either it's called the mailbox or a local part. So this is actually a mailbox. So it is something, let us say, mdk@evaris.bharat, something of the sort. Okay. So in Asca email, it is very easy to validate. So if you are having an input, let us say you have got a web form, and in a web form you have got a input taking from a client or taking from a customer to connect back to him. You can take a URL or you can take a basically email ID. Now, once you take an email ID, most of the cases which we observed is that 96% of our website accepts the long TLD as well as new short TLD. So that's quite encouraging. But certain websites don't accept even TLDs which are longer than 3 characters. And for that, I think we have to do something. And this is what at the end of the day, we are going to talk about what type of a remediation you will be using to accept those so-called the TLDs. So this is the domain part. As you can see, the Asca domain name is limited. Limited, when I use the word, it uses only LDH. LDH stands for letter, digit, and hyphen. So it is only restricted. A domain name will have only a restriction of letter, digit, and hyphen. So letters are A to Z. Okay. So it doesn't make a difference between whether it is the capital letter or a small letter, but it is a L stands for letter. Okay. So you have got a A to Z, then you have got a digit 0 to 9, and you have got a hyphen. That's all. That's only thing are permitted in the domain name system. Okay. And rest of the symbols like question mark and this and that are not permitted. The mailbox rules are little bit different that we will develop on separately. And you can look at the RFPs and so on and so forth, which references are being provided to you at the end of the slides, basically. Now, since the Asca domain name, you have got a 26 alphabets, and the rules are very simple of so-called the validation. So it can be validated using a regex pattern. So that's very simple. So if your website doesn't accept more than 3 characters, I would request you to just modify the regex and permit the so-called the more characters as an input. Secondly, some of the website people restrict whitelist, basically do the whitelisting of the previous 8 domains or 8 TLDs basically. I think if that restriction is removed, then automatically basically your website can accept the new short as well as the new long TLDs basically. So that's a important point from the Asca side of it. Okay. However, the mailbox, actually, if you look at it, the mailbox has little different rules. The domain names, as I said to you, it was only LDH, that is the letter, digit, and hyphen, while the so-called the mailbox has got certain thing more. So in the mailbox, one can use quotable characters, unquotable characters, like you can have a mail with exclamation, hash, and dollar, and percentage, and so on and so forth. Okay, these are the some of the permissible character in the mailbox part of it. Okay, that is before the @ sign. While there are quoted characters are also permissible. So something called the space, the special characters, and so on and so forth. So this is a format, a typical format of an ASCII mail. As I said, it is consists of two parts. One is the domain part and one is the mailbox part. And it is likely, most likely, that it can be validated using regex pattern. So the simple technique is that if you have got a website and if it is not accepting a short or long, you just modify your regex pattern and your job is done. So you will pass first page, that is the first stage of UA compliance. So in the UA compliance, which I am going to talk about in my next slides, the UA compliances are being actually put at the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So if you do this, you definitely pass a stage 1. Okay, and that's a very, very important stage as well. Okay. Okay. 1 second, sorry for this. Okay. So now ASCII domain names also did have certain challenges basically. They are being addressed by different mechanisms. Some of them by technical part, some of them by the administrative policies basically. So this is a combination of both. So it's a administrative policy and a technical policy basically being used for the ASCII domain name. A very important point over here is that as you can see on the screen, there is a color.com and there is a color.com with two different spellings. Similar way, there is a localization.in and localization.in with a Z and S separately. Or if you look at vishwakosh.com, vishwakosh.com, and so on and so forth. So herein there is a spell variant, but the meaning remains the same. Now, as far as the internationalized domain names are concerned, the policy is concerned. Currently, the policy only talks about visual differences. Okay, so which means that it is something called the confusingly similar characters. We talk about something called the confusingly similar characters. In the first two cases, which I showed to you, color.com and color.com, they are visually appearing different. Please try to understand. They are, though they mean the same, they are visually different. Okay, somewhere down the line, why we cannot go to the phonetics part of it, that I will explain separately. But currently, the domain name system is working on something, or a phishing or spoofing has been stopped upon, or this has been worked upon homographs. So this is called the homograph. So this is called the homograph variation colored, and they will lead you to two different websites. So color.com and color.com will lead you to the different website. Similar way, localization with S and localization with Z will lead you to two different. However, a choice is available anyway with the user to come to get them and redirect each other basically. So we have to shell out some small amount of money to have both the domain names or multiple domain names, which is obviously a choice of the client. One more important point which comes up is here, that if you can notice on the screen, ICICI.com and ICICI.com. I think you can, if you look at it very carefully, the second one is not actually ICICI.com. The second one is made using LCI, okay, which means that it is the latter make use of a small l instead of I. So I and L at a smaller point size, because of the fonts variation and because of the font styles, basically they might appear the same. And there is a chance that whenever any mail comes to you, basically from on a mobile or from a SMS, please don't click as it is. Please don't click as it is. Actually, you need to retype the mail or retype the ID so that you don't get fished out of basically. Okay, and this issues are there. As I said to you, they are being taken care by technical part as well as the policy part of it. Okay. Now, second part which is coming up very, very important is that domain names necessarily may not be meaningful. Okay, it is not necessarily that the domain names are meaningful always. It can be anything for that matter. So I can have something 1, 2, 3 at something and something. Okay, so they cannot be meaningful. Okay, and that's what I said, that this stylistic or this phonetic variation or the linguistic variations, there is no single rule at this moment of time wherein you can distinguish or we can have variants coming out of phonetics basically. So I gave an example to you, Hindi.com or Hindi.Bharat and Hindi.Bharat. One Hindi written with Bindi and another with Na Halanda. Both are same, both are permissible, something called as the spelling. But then they are currently, as the policy we have framed basically, at ICANN level, the policy which has been framed, or at the registry level, the policy which is in framed, we are currently not actually looking at homophones. We are looking at only homographs. Okay, so that's an important decision which is to be conveyed to people, and the libraries which are implemented, they will exactly do the same thing which has been implemented in the policy. Now coming to the basically the IDN email. So IDN email is the same. There is no difference. There is a at symbol. The right side of the at is the domain part. The left side is the something called the mailbox part. But here the difference is that, as you can see, this whole mail is called the EAI. That is called the email address internationalization, which necessarily means that you got a Unicode @ IDN.IDN. So this is how it is to be represented. It is called the Unicode @ IDN.IDN. So this is the domain, this is the email, and this part basically before the at, it has been written in something called the Unicode and Unicode UTF-8 version. Basically, it is a UTF-8 because it's a little bit different from Unicode in terms of the so-called the representation of multilingual text onto the encoding side. Okay. While this IIGF.Bharat is a domain part, and now the character set is not limited to something called the only Asca, the 26 alphabet. The rule remains the same, LDH. Okay. So again, it talks about a letter, digit, and hyphen only. But when we say letter, the letter is from the Unicode repository. Unicode repository, which means that, as I explained to you, there are 149 living languages of the world which are being encoded into Unicode, and daily or maybe subsequently they are getting encoded. More and more are getting encoded, and almost like there are 150,000 characters all across the scripts which are been there. So now you have got a whole plethora of characters to be used instead of just limiting yourself to 26 something called the alphabets. Okay, so this is a Unicode version 14 is consisting of 1,50,000 159 modern horizontal scripts, presence of Unicode characters in either mailbox or local part, UTF-8 in a mailbox or local part, and as I said to you, it cannot be validated using regex pattern. It is not just because of the fact that the characters are large enough, but it is fact that there are certain additional rules basically into that, which we will dwell further. There are certain additional rules which are not basically required into the Asca side of it basically. So we do have an additional rules, and those additional rules I will cover up in just some few slides. Okay. Cannot be validated using regex labels in a normalized form. I think I don't have, probably I will have an example at a later slide, but still let me explain this normalized form. What is generally happen is that there is a, if you are a developer, you will definitely know this, that in a Devanagari code page, you have got something called the, a character, just a simple example, a character, let us say is there, which is encoded. There is a matra also encoded separately. Okay, encoded. Matra is also encoded. And there is something called the which is separately. So all these three characters, matra, and have got a separate Unicode code points. Now the question comes over here that how I have to produce So generally I will type then I will type a matra, which should give me okay, or you can have on a keyboard a direct and one can input that. So there are now here two ways of representing internally the same character. Okay, so one is plus matra, which will lead to and as a separate code point. So what normalization does is that plus matra actually says that you have to map it to which is a singular code point. That's currently a basic thing about normalization. We will come to the details further. Okay. Now for validation purposes, as I said to you, if there is an email field, basically for validation purposes, as I said, regex pattern, simple regex pattern may not help. So you have to use libraries. Okay. So it all depends upon which type of a platform your so-called the website or your systems or your devices are using. Depending upon that, you have to use the libraries and actually ensure that the domain is validated. There are protocols. I will explain the protocol separately to you. Okay. So this is the case of phishing. I have already explained to you, so I don't have to get into the detail. The famous case of PayPal.com, wherein PYPL and one remained actually looked similar at a smaller point size. So one has to be very, very careful on these. Though, however, technical things, technically we can take care of too many things, but not all of them basically. Okay. So this I've spoken about homographs and homoglyphs. Okay. Now this is a classic example that you can see on my screen, apple.com. So this apple.com is coming from all ASCII characters. Okay, all ASCII characters. It is very simple. So you get all the ASCII characters, apple.com, and it is represented. What you see on the right side basically is not ASCII character. Okay, the apple.com, the first letter itself is coming from something called the Cyrillic small letter A. Okay, and then it has been actually appearing the same. Okay, it's for the common man, it appears to be the same. Even you can get phished easily basically over here. But here this A is coming from something called the Unicode repository, and it is a Cyrillic small letter A. However, the conversion doesn't happen this way. So when we talk about apple.com, so this is the apple.com. You may be aware of the domain name system, basically a functioning of a domain name system. The domain name systems only accepts LDH. Okay, for domain name resolution purposes, the domain name system only accepts LDH. Okay, these are the characters which is, and you cannot change that. Okay, because domain name system, if you want to change, it is going to cost a bomb, and worldwide you cannot change that. And that is where there is a via media which has been used over here, which is called as converting an internationalized domain name into something called the Unicode. Okay, which is a nothing but a ASCII encoding. So if you look at the ASCII encoding over here of apple.com, it will be actually converted to something called the Unicode, which starts with xn hyphen hyphen. This is the header part of it, and then there is some algorithm basically, which is the Unicode algorithm, which works on that and actually converts your internationalized domain name into something called the ASCII encoding, which is called the Unicode encoding for domain name resolution purposes. So when I put something onto the, let us say, browser, suppose I put evaris.bharat onto the browser. Actually, the browser for you, it looks like a evaris.bharat, but when it goes onto the wire, when it leaves your system, it gets converted into Unicode, and then actually the DNS resolution happens over there. Okay, I think this point hopefully is very, very clear to people who are the developers for it. I'm not going to into the details of this because we have already covered this part. This also I covered this part. Only one point which I wanted to just make more highlighted over here is that domain names may not be meaningful. As you can see, Indian languages, just to give an example, that since all the Unicode code points are permissible or other permissible, okay, they're not all of them, because we have made a language tables and so on and so forth, that I will dwell upon separately. But most of the Unicode code points are being permissible. So generally what happens, one can try to take only matra dot bar. Okay, might try to take. It is possible to take that way. But what has happened in our case is that we have made a policy at a registry level. So there is a policy at a ICANN level, okay, at a global level, and there is a policy something called the local level. Okay, so these are two policies which are there. The registry policy is more stringent policy, which takes care of a regional requirements. Basically, it takes care of a regional requirement. So what we have done is that we have made a valid syllable policy over there. So syllable cannot be a wrong syllable. One cannot have a wrong syllable. That's what the policy states. So I can have the any domain name, but the syllable should be a well-formed syllable. So that is the policy what we made. So one cannot take matra dot bharat just to confuse somebody. Okay, so this is the changes what we people have brought into the domain name system, and it is more secure. Because of this, it is more secure. Okay, so you don't have to worry about those. And these points I am just telling, once a developer is there, if he understands this nitty-gritty, I think he will be more equipped basically to implement it in a much better way. That's the only purpose of this sharing the complexities of the Indian languages to you people. So as I said, the domain names necessarily cannot be meaningful. There is nothing where you can actually spell check or well-formed words and so on and so forth. So that is not possible at all. And hence, as a policy decision, we are only looking at homographs, which necessarily mean that we are only validating from the perspective, majorly validating from the perspective of confusingly similar characters. Okay, and these are some of the rules are also there, and those rules are being implemented by way of a particular protocol. As I said to you, you cannot do it with the regex pattern. You have to do with something called a library, and those libraries are available. Those are freely available. Let me tell you, if you got a Java script, you want to use the JavaScript, the library is available. If you want to use Python, the library is available. The job is absolutely simple. Okay, you have to just use the library and just validate your domain. That's all. So the IDNA 2003 protocol was there earlier, which was based upon Unicode 3.2 version, because you are fully aware that the Unicode version is actually changing. Why changing? Just because new languages get added into that, or even the properties of some of the characters get changed, and so on and so forth. So Unicode is a huge repository. It's not all about only encoding, but it's all about knowledge base which is embedded into the Unicode to understand what each character is all about. Okay, so there are properties of a characters and which characters are permissible, what properties of the characters are permissible, are being defined properly into something called the IDNA protocols. Okay. Okay, I will just skip this part because this has already been covered. There's too much things which can happen now. Okay. Just to give another example, how generally a syntax spoofing happens. So these are spoofing things. One is a mixed script confusable. So it might happen that this PayPal.in, the whole letter character set is in Latin. Okay, you will never notice this. Visually, you will never notice that the whole letters which are there, PayPal.in, is being written in Latin character set. While this PayPal.in, if you look at it, uses 430 Cyrillic small a, okay, at both the places. Okay, so you, from the visual perspective, you will never able to see those particular thing, and that's why the rules are there that no script mixing in a single label. So there is a label. Let us say evaris.bharat. So Bharat is something called as top level domain, which is called as CCTLD, while evaris stands for the subdomain. Okay, and it is called the label. So everything which is being splitted by the dot is called the label. Okay, and there are rules to validate the labels, and those rules are actually implemented into the library. What is the rule? Rule says that no mixing of the script permissible, because if you mix the script, then the issues which you can see on the screen are going to be many more, and it is difficult basically. So if you don't allow the script mixing, I think your life becomes exceptionally simple. Okay, and that is how the rules are being made to make you people more secure in while accessing domain names or email ID. Okay, I will just skip this part. One important point is that if you look at this example.com/xbad.com, so let us say this slash, what this slash stands, actually it can be a 2004 fraction slash also. It's not your forward slash, it is actually 2004. So it might appear same, but then how one understands that? I think for the end user, you don't have to worry. Even for the developer, you don't have to worry, because all these rules, regulations are being taken care into the something called the protocols, which are been there, which I talked about the protocols. Okay. I don't know how much time do I have, Sarika?
So you can take another 5 minutes. That would be okay.
Probably another 10 minutes will be required.
Fine. It's okay. We are at 1:04. We can wrap up by 1:15. That's okay, sir.
Yeah, and any questions are there, then we can take up the
question. I think my colleague has just posted one question. If there's anything else come up, in fact, 2 questions he has already posted, sir.
Yeah, since this topic is a very large topic, wanted to give a background also, so that while you implement, you are well equipped to understand.
No, we completely understand, sir. Completely understand.
Yeah, so one need to understand the nuances. Just for a cautious sake, it's not a question that you have to implement everything, because that, as I said to you, it has been taken care of the libraries, and I got 2 slides to show how you can implement just quickly.
Sure, So, so you please take 10 minutes, not an issue, sir.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you. So as I said to you, even the ASCII domain names are not actually away from the threat. As an example, if you look at, if you take a R and then you followed immediately by, let us say, small n. So R and N together might appear used as a M. Okay. So somebody can take RN and then something called, then they might just try to fish it like Microsoft.com, something of that sort. So even domain names, ASCII domain names have got certain threats like this. Double V put together can appear as a W. Okay. But those are actually, that's what I again and again repeat. Most of the things are taken care by the technical part of it, but certain things are taken as a policy form, and then there is something called an end user. In this digital world, the end user also has to be really cautious. Basically, this is also an important. So there is a lot of training requirements in terms of the end user to understand that one should not actually click on any link which has come to you by way of SMS or which was people get a lot of links basically saying that you receive an award, you receive this, that, and please don't do that. I repeat, please don't do that. Please retype the especially when you are dealing with the financial part of it. Please type it out, the URL, or please type it out the link. Okay, this is from the caution perspective. Okay. Now, okay, fine. But as I said to you, the internationalized domain are more secured than what we anticipated with ASCII, basically, because it takes care of all these things. Okay, there is something called the root zone label generation rules are there, which takes care of this confusingly similar characters, and it doesn't permit them basically. There is something called the variant generation program, wherein the variants are either blocked or allowed basically, and are being given together. So this is how certain things are being taken care of, and so internationalized domain names are more secure. This is what I wanted to stress a point. Now, why IDNs? Actually, IDNA protocols are there. There are two protocols. One is the IDNA 2003 and IDNA 2008. The latest one is 2008, and we actually appeal that one should only use 2008 because that's a forward-looking. Some of the registries would have been started on 2003. They need to migrate, but there is some migration period. So there is certain flags are there in both the protocols, so that you can actually continue using 2003 for some period of time, which is called the transitional flag. And then over a period of time, you can do away with 2003 protocols and you should be on the 2008. So this IDNA goal is that Unicode version agnostic, which means that every now and then, suppose the Unicode version changes, you should not frame, or you should not require to change your software code. That's very important. So the version of the Unicode can change, but then your software code remains the same. Your libraries remain the same. Your domain name system remains the same. Everything remains the same without any problem over there. Okay, easier to understand, more predictable when languages and script are applied and used, and more adaptable to the regional requirement. So as I said to you, there is also one level that as India has taken a decision to have little bit stricter policy in regards with the syllable formation rules and so on and so forth. A similar way other countries have already implemented their own regional policies towards that. Okay, so the most important part of the protocols are basically, the protocols are devised mainly to include latest and current version of Unicode. So Unicode version changes, as I said to you, so it will adapt to the newer version, because as I said, each character in a Unicode is thoroughly defined. It has got something called the properties. Each character has got a property table, and those property tables are being referred by these particular libraries to figure out whether this character is permissible, this character is not permissible, this character should follow this character should not follow this, and so on and so forth. So I'll give some examples of this in 1 or 2 slides. So there is a list of permissible and valid character repositories, transforming a Unicode string to remove cases and other variant differences. So as we've been told, basically, that a domain name written in capital in ASCII, actually it's into small. So whether you put it in a capital or a small, it is same. Okay, checking the result string of validity according to certain rules. Those rules can be actually talked about. So what are the rules? That the domain name, the label should not start with the hyphen, end with the hyphen, then no mixing of the scripts. This is another thing. Then your domain name should not start with xn hyphen hyphen, okay, or it should not start with a hyphen hyphen in a third and fourth position. And then there is a certain linguistic something called the rules are there, which are 100% a part of the libraries. Okay. Handling deviation, consideration from the left to right script, transforming Unicode character to Unicode for working with DNS, which I explained to you. So whenever you say evaris.bharat, then the code which leaves out of your system is not the evaris.bharat written in Unicode. It will get into Unicode and does a DNS query. Okay, that's how the Unicode conversion is being taken care at different level. Okay, no script mixing, language tables for permissible character with a code block. So what is happening? Let us say Devanagari code page is there, and in a Devanagari code page you have got other symbols also. So we have got something called a if you please look at the Devanagari code page of Unicode, then you will find there is a danda, there is a double danda, which are the actually sentence marker in our case, or udatta, anudatta for actually Sanskrit. Okay, and some of the symbols are also there basically. Okay, so those are not permissible in the domain name, because we find if you add those, then you will make more confusing and more it will be more insecurity to the local domain name system. And that's why the rules are being made not by a single organization. It is a huge work. Almost all the global leaders or global technology players have actually taken a participation. So you can see the humongous work which has happened behind this to make your domain name more and more secure. Okay, the minimizing the impact of transition from 2003 to 2008 and what is allowed on which layer of IDN. IDNA protocol have been developed to resolve many, if not all, including all of them, bidirectional spoofing, which I talked about earlier also. Okay. I'm not getting into the details of this, but as I said, there are two protocols, 2003, 2008, and you can look at the RFCs, you can search on the net, or you can look at the USAG tech site. I'll give the reference of the USAG tech site, and I think those documents which are being made are very, very simple and written in a lucid language. You can just understand. If you don't have to be a language expert to understand this, or you don't have to be even a domain expert to understand this. Okay. Okay. So these are some of the protocols. I'm not getting into this. This is a very complex slide, but as I said to you, a lot of efforts have gone in terms of, this is the Devanagari code page, which is you can see on the screen, and these characters which you see marked with a pink color, they are not permissible. Okay, while the characters which are there in yellow, they are permissible characters. Okay, so this is how things are being taken care of. And this is the actually a backend so-called as a syllable validation engine basically. So these are certain rules of those are being implemented at the registry level. Okay, so as I said to you, this is something called the variant generation engine in the registry, wherein you get a mudra. So this is the mudra. There is a variant generation engine which will try to spew out a similar looking so-called domain names. So this is the mudra, this is the mudna. Actually, it is written with the no. Okay, and this is with go. But if you look at a smaller point size, every fellow looks at the same. So this is not a simple task. Let me tell you, it's not a simple task. This is only related to within our one script, but the work has happened across all the script basically. So it's not. It's a humongous work which has gone for the root level. Rather root zone label generation rules which are there. So we all the world languages are being, or the scripts are being taken into consideration. Coming to the Indian languages, as I said to you, these are ill-formed character, ill-formed syllable. So this is ill-formed. Ill-formed, when I use the word, you cannot have ta and then again an e matra over there, or you cannot start with u matra. And so in our case, in order to avoid more secure domain names we have to have, so we have taken something care saying that it will be only a valid syllable. So there it goes through a validation engine and it will say, okay, only these out of this, only these two are valid syllable, like kitab and Bharat Bhasha, rather syllables, rather words having valid syllables, and these are kitab and Bharat Bhasha or Bharat. Okay, I think I talked about this. Another point, just last point from my side, why libraries and why things and so on and so forth. So again, one second, let me adjust my screen. Why library is required by the registries as well as the end user validation. So when you are actually trying to take a domain name, this process is also carried at the registry level, okay, or the at the registrant. Finally, at the end of the day, it takes from the registry only. So the validation engines are put over there, and even for the from the end user perspective, from the client side also, you require the validation engines. Large why libraries? Because registries, large character repositories, which I told you, allowed disallowed characters which are there. So there are so many characters out of 1,40,50,000 which I said to you. There are certain characters which are allowed, say there are certain characters which are disallowed, and there are certain characters which are have certain rules that okay, this character will follow this character will not follow this, and so on and so forth. Okay, and then as I said, language specific rules. This is a very typical case of Marathi or Nepali basically, wherein the hyphen is permissible, right? Hyphen is permissible in LDH rule, and this is a ya character. So if I put a hyphen and a ya, it looks like eyelash r, okay, which is also another type of spoofing and then phishing rather. And that's why a specific rule has been devised that one cannot have an hyphen like this for two characters which are like ya and h. Okay, these are only two characters where in the something called the eyelash r has been used in Marathi language. Okay, so this is how you can actually notice that at what level the work has gone and at what level the things have been considered in terms of the security purposes. Okay, I think this I covered. Now the just another two slides, and I will actually stop there. From the remediation side of it, basically, what we can say that, as was been told by Dr. Data, that all the systems, the devices, the applications should support IDNs as an EAI, just like Asca. Okay, so it is not a question that you fix at one place, you have to fix at multiple places. Okay, so there are multiple stakeholders which are supposedly to work on this particular aspect, and I would appeal to the people who are here, developers, at least they should have their own side basically implemented. This is what my request would be. If they're a website developer, I would appeal to them that they should have the forms which are there at least stage 1 ready or stage 2 ready. And I think we will be having more detailed discussion on this particular aspect as a separate what is called the exercise, and we can probably of thinking some hackathons to see to it that people can implement there and there itself. It's a job of the first step which is there of accepting the short and long. It's just a matter of half hour. Okay, so it's not like that you have to invest a huge amount of time to change over there. So the stage 1 can be completed in just 1 hour to 2 hours. If a developer is there, I think he can quickly do that. That should not be a trouble. Okay, now coming to the stage 2, as I said to you, you require to use the libraries. We will guide you to use which libraries are to be used. I think I can share the whole there are already rather documentation available on the USAG site. You can go, they are properly made. You can just go through, you walk through it, and you can implement. So there are libraries available. You can just plainly simple use those library and make your internationalized domain acceptable in your website or in your systems or devices. So provide the ability for service to accept IDN input as either U label or A label. U label is a Unicode label, what you see on the display side, while the A label, as I explained to you, it is a Unicode version of it. Okay, so there are certain rules and regulations of what is acceptance, as was been a slide was being shown by Ajay Data. Accept, validate, then store, and then process on input, then process on output and display. Okay, so every software, if you want to make an IDN compatible, then it has to go through these stages. So one is you should be able to input the characters, Indian language characters, by either a keyboard, or the operating system should have a facility to display also. So which means that the input should be there. Secondly, acceptance means after you should have facility to input, then you should have facility to accept that, and then third part is the validate. So there are rules to validate, like IDNA protocols are there to you validate. Then the storing. So in the storing, basically you have to store, you have to take a call over there. You can store both part of it. You can store as a U label as well as a A label also. Why A label? Because finally it is going to leave your system for basically DNS resolution. But why U label? Because you may require to search, you may require to do some operations on that. Okay, so that's why the recommendations is you can store on both basically. While only on the display side, you have to display in something called the U label only. Okay, because the end user should not get confused by having some display like xn hyphen hyphen. You will never understand what website you are going to refer to. Okay, so these are the stages which are being coined by ICANN. One is the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. Stage 3, I think there is a separate workshop which is been looked at, because it's from a perspective of the email address internationalization. It is not all about basically only acceptance of the so-called domain names, but it is from the perspective of the email mailboxes creation, or a mail reaching the person, and so on and so forth, the internationalized mail. So for that, you require the mail service providers to upgrade their systems to the requisite so-called the protocols as well as the requisite encodings. Okay, so that I think today's discussion, it will be very lengthy discussion, so I stop over there. And stage 1 and stage 2, as I said, they are simple. We can guide you further. I think you can get in touch with Fiki, and we definitely can have one-to-one session with you people, and whatever help is required, we'll be more than happy to help you basically at any moment of time. Thank you. I think I will stop over here basically, because I have overshooted the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni, for of course taking us in detail in the given timeline on this various aspects of the, the technical aspects, what are things people need to take care, why it is important, how you have to differentiate various aspects in the various stages. Like you mentioned, yes, of course, this is not the only one. We can, of course, we request the members, in case if they want any help from our side, local initiative chapter side, we have a panel of experts who can help you out. You can let us know, and we'll be happy to guide you for the same. And also, as part of the discussion series and this, I would say, the knowledge-based series, this will continue. We will have many more sessions in future with this subject or around this subject, with the other things coming in line. So thank you, Maheshji, for, of course, taking our time and giving us this knowledge and sharing it with all of us. And we have got 2 questions from the audience. I would just see if Dr. Data is also there. I think Dr. Data is not there. So maybe you would have to then take up those questions. One is, how universal acceptance can help the business to reach more customers? And the second question is, how the GTLDs can help in expanding the multilingual internet in India? Yeah,
okay. Actually, the first question, when you say the estimated business on the internationalized domain names is 9.2 billion worldwide. So it is a question wherein all the systems which are there. As I said earlier also, that Unicode, when Unicode started, there was not much of a excitement over there, but then people felt the need that we should support Unicode, and it took time. Basically, let me tell you, it took time. And now, if you look at the Unicode implementation, I think more or less everybody, all the devices, systems, any platform you take it, the Unicode is implemented. If you don't implement Unicode, you are out of the race. That's very, very for sure. Means let us take an example that earlier people were storing the data in the font, okay, and having their website in the font. So you require a font to be delivered via some mechanism so that it looks appropriate on the website or any device for that matter. And now what happens to your search engine? Search engine fails miserably over there because it doesn't understand the code in which what you have written. Same step is here basically, that we are trying to gear up for the future. That's a very, very important part. And the advantages or the benefits of this internationalized domain name, that the user feels homely. This is very, very important. As was being shown by Dr. Ajay Data, that you have been presented the English domain name, but the fellow doesn't understand the English domain name at all. He doesn't know what exactly it is written, basically. So it would be worthwhile for those people. If it had been in Marathi, then it would have been worthwhile for those people to look at those aspects, basically. And the day is not very far in terms of implementing this, basically. So one, as I said to you, user feels homely. He doesn't feel cheated also. That's a very important, because if you present me some knowledge, basically, let us say a scheme, let us say, and a scheme is written in, for example, in English. So I will shy away from actually going through that. I will not get the full information. But if it is written in my language, then I will be more than able to connect. Same thing happens with the domain names. I will be able to connect more easily with that, and definitely I think there is a huge business opportunity in actually rectifying those systems and so on and so forth. Yeah, thank you. What was the second part basically?
It is like how GTLDs can help in expanding the multilingual internet.
Yeah, actually, if you have seen the slide carefully, if the GTLDs earlier were they limited only to 8, okay, that was first part, and it was only limited to Asca. And when the new GTLD program started appearing on the scene, so firstly it was as I said, new short and new long Asca started appearing on the scene, and the IDN came later on basically. So from that point till this point, you have got close to around 1,488 GTLDs registered. Out of that, as I said, 153 are IDN CTLDs or GTLDs put together. So it's a huge business. So let us take a case of big companies or big houses like .SBI. SBI has already taken a top level domain, by the way. .SBI. Tata also have taken .Tata, and so many people have taken. Why they are taken? Actually, you should understand very carefully that let us say .SBI is there, and SBI will have all their customer base inside that fraternity, inside .SBI. Okay, this is very, very important point. This is secondly, if they tomorrow decide to give an email to each of their customer, then that email will be from their domain, and they can make rules and regulations so properly that the phishing attacks or other attacks can be definitely stopped, and the mail can come 100% from State Bank of India. One can ensure that. So these are great advantages basically in terms of having your own GTLD programs, and that's why I think it is growing up and people are appreciating this. Means .McDonald's or even let us say .Tata. Why .Tata has taken? Because they have got, it's not all about their employees. It is all about their fraternity, whole fraternity. What does that include? The service people, the rather they're all dealers, distributors, and every fellow. And whenever you are communicating to the outside world, you get a definitely a brand of Tata, .Tata. Whenever you communicate, means you have got a mail from something .Tata. I think that's where you are able to create your own kingdom. I will use the word kingdom, as well as you are able to reach out to a lot of people basically. Those are great advantages of GTLD program, and GTLD program is definitely basically scaling up very heavily. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kulkarni. I think that's for all for today. I think these are the questions which came up in the chat, so we've taken it up. Any more questions, audience? You, as I always say, you are free to write to the secretariat, and we can take with the presenter offline and get back to you with the replies. So with this, we would like to conclude this session. Thank you, Maheshji. Thank you, Dr. Data, for joining us today. As I mentioned, it's been a privilege to hear you both, and thank you, Maheshji, for taking us into the details of the subject so that all of us can understand in a simplified manner. Thank you, audience, for being supportive and for joining us today on Saturday. And of course, we look forward to your continuous support in many more series which we plan to organize in coming months. With this, we would like to conclude the session. Thank you all. Jai Hind.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot.